What do I need to know about you to understand the life you've led? Take me way back to your childhood and the early context.
Both parents are immigrants to the U.S. Mother was born in France, came here. But father was born in Iran. They met in medical school in Europe. And then my mother brought him back with her to the U.S. And then they had me. And they split. My mom had a lot of demons. She had a lot of things she struggled with when I was coming up. So I pretty much was raised by my dad. Had no siblings. It was just me and my dad until I was about 15. He got remarried. It was a short stint in terms of how long I was like kind of in the house. You know, like right at that stage is when you can drive. And I was kind of on my own almost at that point. As soon as I could work and drive, I was kind of out of the house. And then from there, did the thing that most people try and do, which is I worked hard at school, mostly because I just didn't want my dad to be upset with me, which was the main driver for most of my achievement in my career for the first half, was all just trying to gain his approval. Did all the things that I thought he would want me to. Got a job at a government contracting consulting firm, defense contracting. It was space, cyber, and ISR. So it's intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance for the military. Sounded really cool, was less cool when you were in it. And I was very, very sad at that point in my life. And so it was very much like I always hoped I wouldn't wake up the next day.
Do you mean that?
Truly.
You really mean that?
100%. 100%. Because I remember when I was looking at, because a lot of people have like rock bottom moments. I think I had more of a rock top moment, which was, I was 22. I had done everything that my dad had wanted me to do at this point. I was looking out from the condo that I had been able to buy with this job that I had. And I was like, is this it? And the whole time I just really didn't enjoy my life. And it was just, not wanting to wake up. And it was the decision to leave Baltimore, which is where I was from, to quit that path, to decide to start a business of my own, was still to this day the hardest thing I've ever done. By far, all the things we've been through to build what we have, the hardest decision was taking the leap for me. And it was because like I knew that my dad so much wanted me to do what I was doing, because he was so happy that I was doing everything he wanted me to do at that point. And I had told him over and over again that I wanted to do this other stuff. And he's like, yeah, like later. And so I knew that it would probably put a big dent in our relationship if I left. But for me, it was actually confronting the fact that I didn't want to be alive anymore, which was the thing that gave me enough courage, or whatever you want to call it, to actually make the decision to leave home. And so I started driving across the country. I mean, it took me 6 months to do this. Like between when I decided I really wanted to do this and when I actually did it, it took me 6 months. And I called him when I was like halfway across the United States, and I was like, I'm going to California. I'm going to open a gym. I'm going to get into fitness. And he was like, why are you so extreme? And he like lost it. And then we didn't really talk much for a long time.
When you started realizing that your life was one where you didn't want to wake up in the morning, when you had that job in management consultancy, did you experience suicidal ideation? Is that what you're saying when you say I didn't want to wake up into my life every day?
It was never like, I've never had this is how I'd kill myself. Nope. Never had that. I just always like the idea that I could not wake up the next day sounded good.
When you look back in hindsight from that moment backwards, what are the series of decisions or the things that led you to find yourself in that position? And I ask that because there's a lot of people that can probably relate.
Totally.
And there's probably quite a consistent set of frog pads or stones that one is walking down for whatever reason that lead you to a position where you go, what the fuck? Whose life is this?
I think the one line summary for me was that like I felt like I had to let my dad's dream die for mine to live. And I felt like my entire life it had always up to that point had been like go to this school, do these studies. I mean, it's a common thing. Like it's not like I had something that a lot of people don't have. Many people, and to be fair, I'm very grateful for the skills, discipline, et cetera, that instilled in me. Because I think you have the hard hand of an authoritarian parent when you're growing up, and it teaches you a lot of skills. And then, the flip side is if you have a very laissez-faire parent, like you never learn those skills, which then benefit you later. So, who knows? But for me, I knew that he just wanted me to be a doctor. That's what he was. That would have been his dream. I went to school as pre-med. And then it was like even changing my degree from pre-med to just a business degree was like a huge deal. But he was okay with that as long as I followed like the business path. And so when I did my 2 years of consulting, which is kind of the typical like 2 to 4 years you do consulting and then you apply to go to business school. When I was going through that process, I was answering the question for like the Harvard MBA, and it was like, how will Harvard MBA help your short and long-term goals? And I sat there for like 2 days trying to answer the question. And I was like, it just isn't. I want to start a business. And so that was when I kept trying to, start that conversation with my dad, and it just wasn't really happening. And so that was kind of the breaking point for me. It was like, I just felt terrible about my life, and I didn't like the way it was going. And for me, it was such a key point because the biggest line of reasoning I had for myself in order to convince myself to confront my father, or at least disappoint my father, or the version of myself that he wanted me to be, was to say that like, I have to be comfortable dying in his eyes. And a lot of people and many people might think that was hyperbole, but for me, it was very true. Like I knew that I would die in his eyes, and I did. To give you context, so I had the gyms, and I opened up multiple after that, got to about 6 locations, sold those, started a gym turnaround business, did that for 2 years. All the while we weren't really, we were like, okay, in touch. And then we started the licensing business, which is Gym Launch. And that's the one that like really took off. And we hadn't been super in touch. And I get a call out of the blue, and he wasn't like a cold call. You know what I mean? I was like, this is weird. So I pick up the phone, and he's like, you're going to want to sit down for this. And I was like, okay, what's up? I was thinking like cancer, I mean? I'm just like, what is it going to be? He was like, I'm sorry. And I was like, for what? And he was like, everything. And I was like, okay. And I was very angry still because, this is what I told him. So I was like, that point when people like get on stage and they accept the awards, and mind you, at this point, I think we're probably taking home $1.5 million a month, you know what I mean? And take home like personal income from the license. It was a decent size, like, I'm not, conglomerate, like public, but it was a decent sized business. And I was like, when people get on stage and they accept awards for things, I was like, the first thing they always say is like, hey, I just want to thank my mom and dad for always believing in me. And I was like, I'm not going to say that. I was like, because you didn't. I was like, you're only saying this now once everyone believed, because it's not belief anymore. It's fact. It's evidence. I was like, this apology means nothing to me. And besides that, I stopped caring what you thought 6 years ago, which is why I left. And so I had like, that's like, I could have just accepted it, and I didn't do that.
How do you feel about that?
Today I probably would have just said thanks. I appreciate it. I know where he was trying. He was trying to extend an olive branch, and I just wasn't there. I was still seething. I was still very angry that I had not gotten any support during that process. And maybe that was very woe is me. But I was still very angry at that point. And, to give also a little bit of context, his response to that was like, well, we'll see how long it lasts.
You're joking.
No. So like my father and I, like, he is a very strong personality, and so do I. And we both think we're right.
Are you angry about it now? Honestly?
No, I mean, like, I think I can still feel the emotions, but I feel like I've, thought about it enough to say that I can logically say, I think he absolutely did the best he could with what he had. He was a single dad, another country, raising a kid, trying to get that kid to fit in and do the things that, like, one of the things that I think my dad always wanted me to be able to do is like, because he's darker skinned than I am, he's Middle Eastern. He always wanted me to like have access to like the back rooms where like deals were made that he felt like he wasn't a part of. And so he just wanted me to have that. And so I think he just drove me as much as he could to get that. It's just like when you're on the other side of it, like all you feel is never succeeding. But I can appreciate it now in retrospect. But it definitely was still, it hardened me a lot.